Hello, this is Vicky Pryce. I'm here to read some extracts from my book, Women versus Capitalism. I want to talk a little bit about sectors and what happens. We know a lot about the financial sector and some other sectors where there is obvious discrimination and sexism that we see and where there isn't serious gender equality, but there are some other sectors that come as a bit of a surprise. I just want to look at the cultural sector and read out some bits from the book. So, what we have from a number of reports that have looked at it in detail is an absolute challenge to the conventional belief that the creative sector, employing a high percentage of women, is a haven for gender equality. It's true that there is a larger number of women than men enrolling in university courses related to culture and the arts. However, when you look at what actually goes on in the professional arts world, this is not reflected in women's career progression or representation. They tend to dominate the administrative areas of public cultural institutions. They're overrepresented in the informal sector within that sector and are underrepresented in decision-making roles. So, there's a glass ceiling. In the context of this glass ceiling, there's limited choice of career paths within the sector, and the result is job segregation manifesting itself again in this sector too, and it becomes a vicious cycle. There still seems to this day to be an underrepresentation, therefore, of women artists, film and theatre directors and composers, and works by women that do exist rarely seem to get the prominence they probably deserve. So in the decade from 2009 to 2019, only 18 of 180 films in competition with the Cannes Film Festival were made by women. So this absence of senior roles also leads to a domino effect in hiring patterns in the sector. What we have is a catch-22 situation where women remain underrepresented and so fail to gain credibility with their generally male peers. So it becomes a perpetuating situation. So let's take another example though, less well known. The video games. Apparently, an equal number of men and women play them, which I had not realized. I thought that maybe women had better things to do with their time. Anyway, I have only once played a video game with one of my grandsons on his little iPad. We were trying to get a man to jump over a cliff edge and onto safety across without him falling into the abyss below, which of course would signify the end of the game and no points earned at all. Disaster, in other words. Screams of disappointment from my grandson because we were really useless at it. So we did it again and again, and finally we pressed the buttons fast enough for the escaping hero to make it through. Hooray! Of course he was a male character, trying to escape from something horrid. I thought that maybe a woman would not have found herself in such a difficult situation, but how to explain that to my grandson? But in all seriousness, it is a disturbing fact that just as many women as men play video games, yet only 3.3% of top video games feature female protagonists. Just one reason for concern about this is that it helps to perpetuate the stereotype of men as the people who are expected to be strong and assertive and aggressive, as many videos involve a lot of violence. It's not hard to guess the reason why video games are hardly ever about women. The vast majority of the people making video games that get released are men. So women account for just 5% of people working in interactive content sectors and only 6% in the game industries as a whole. In the UK, it is believed that only 19% of those working in game development are women. And this gender imbalance in the video game industry reflects that of the gender imbalance in the tech sector more broadly. So as in film, the lack of senior women in real life and the lack of strong, complex female characters in games, of course, perpetuates the myth that decision-making in tough environments doesn't come naturally to women. So senior roles and senior role models held by women remain few and far between. Then there's sport. We know that differential treatment of women's sport has existed for ages. And in fact, sport has been a laggard when it comes to women's emancipation. Interestingly, if you look at the leadership of the international sport associations and federations, 33 out of 35 were run by men in 2017 when we looked at the data, and a number had no women at that time at all on their executive committees. That included federations representing sports that mainly attract women, such as the International Handball Federation. Others with no women on their executive boards were the International Basketball Federation and the International Golf Federation. Now in the UK, of course, we've had the excitement over the progress of England's female football team, the Lionesses, who in the 2019 Women's World Cup, where they made quite a lot of progress, helped hugely promote women's football. But it must have come as a surprise to the younger generation caught up in the excitement to learn that in the UK's Football Association history, the FA had banned the use of its club's grounds by women footballers for 5 decades until 1971, considering the sport quite unsuitable for females. And frankly, if you look across the sports, the only sport that pays women as well as men taking part is tennis. And in that context, it's such a shame that because of the coronavirus crisis, we are unlikely to have Wimbledon played this summer, and we will miss out hugely as a result. Thank you.